We're back with another episode of Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. My name is Kenny. I'm host. Let's start over again.
Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select two doors at checkout, and if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Bringing to you the best stories from icons in the bourbon industry, it's Bourbon Pursuit. Now here are your hosts, Ryan and Kenny.
Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. My name is Kenny, and I've got my co-host here today, Ryan. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Here at Buffalo Trace, excited to hang out with these guys. Really like their stuff, so kind of really interested to talk to Harlen and hopefully become his friend.
Well, I think he's definitely somebody that everybody wants to be friends with because, at this stage, Buffalo Trace is very much a huge recognized brand name in the bourbon industry. People, maybe they at least some of our readers, a lot of them, or listeners, readers, what do we have, an ebook or something here? But, they look and maybe they just see the Buffalo Trace and they see that one brand, but, Buffalo Trace comprises of a lot of different brands here. And a lot of the ones that you might not think of, H&H, Eagle Rare, Blanton's, there's the list goes on for a while. Colonel Taylor, Van Winkle. I mean, it keeps going, right? So we're definitely very excited to have on our guest here today is Harlen Wheatley. Harlen is the master distiller here at Buffalo Trace. So, definitely glad you could be here today to kind of talk to us and give us, your story, right? So I guess that's kind of a good way to start, right? So kind of tell us, before life at Buffalo Trace, we know a little bit about you. Anybody can Google you and find about your history as, engineering background and, kind of what led you into the bourbon realm itself.
Well, I think being from Kentucky and being, born and raised in this area, I went to school at University of Kentucky. Everybody knows a little bit about the whiskey industry in Kentucky. Back when I started here, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, but that for me was enough to keep me in Kentucky. I wanted to stay close to home, close to relatives. We did have family in a business, so for me it was kind of a natural progression into it. I was lucky enough when I got out of college that.
So what was you said there was a family business? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we had family in the business before Prohibition, so legally.
So you do have family lineage and some ties into this.
Yeah,
okay.
But and then we had some people that experimented as well. But for me, it was about using my education, staying close to home, close to family, and just luckily for me at Buffalo Trace, there was an opening for somebody to work under the distiller at the time, Gary Gayhart, and I worked for him until he retired. And so we do kind of things, and we've always done that, even all the way back to the Civil War days. We've hired somebody with a decent background to train under the current distiller and then continue to work. And we kind of do things traditionally here.
Yeah, so with Buffalo Trace, I guess it's different from other distilleries. It seems like the master distiller kind of stays in the family lineage, but here it seems like nobody's related. But so why is that?
Well, I think it's just the way it worked out. But we have in the distillery we have a lot of history with families and a lot of different people going and a lot of different generations back. Being here 240 years, you're going to have that, and it was just kind of the way it worked out as far as distillers go. One thing, the distillers here have all been legitimate, and we're doing the work up front. And so, when you come to Buffalo Trace, everything's authentic. Yep. There's a big difference.
Cool. So about your, before Prohibition era, so your family, was there a certain distillery that they worked for? That
Jet Brothers Distillery was one of them, and the Jet Brother, I named my son Jet after that. Well, I probably shouldn't tell him it was that. It was a family name.
It's funny. So, my wife, we named our first daughter Stella. My wife says she really loves the name, but I guarantee it's probably because she loves the beer too.
Yeah,
so.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
It was all related, but we did that in honor of the legacy of that name, and it was a distillery in Carrollton, Kentucky, and we actually looked up, or I tried to look up the family recipe and see if I could duplicate it, but everything was lost. They had a big fire and lost everything, so it's kind of but just the fact that we're in Kentucky, just about everybody in Kentucky knows somebody who's been in the distilling business,
right,
and that's not too unusual to be able to continue that.
Yeah, it definitely is a tight-knit group, especially between between you and other master distillers, right? It's co-opetition, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Working together, but they still have competition in the marketplace.
Yeah, we had a little event there Saturday. It was with the Bourbon Review guys. They call it Bourbon Classic.
The Bourbon Classic, yeah.
Bourbon Classic, yeah.
And they had a group of us up on the
panel.
Panel, and we were talking about, and it was pretty friendly. Every now and then you get a couple jabs, but usually most people don't do any jabs. It's mostly a friendly atmosphere, especially in production.
It's one of the very unique things that you kind of see in this industry is that ability for everybody to be very cordial to each other still, because it's definitely not a cutthroat industry, because you've all experienced the same hardships through the downtimes of the brown market and stuff like that too. So
right, yeah, I think the high waters is floating all boats for sure. And we're all in this together, and I think everybody realizes that we're not. And sales and marketing is probably a little bit different. They do worry about market share and things like that, but in production, it's not that way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We all get our corn, and rye, and malt, and all that from different areas, but basically the same areas at the same time.
Right.
That's cool. So when you went into University of Kentucky, were you set on, hey, I want to work at a distillery, or did you you were in Kentucky and started drinking bourbon, hey, I really want to get a distillery?
I did.
Just kind of landed, right?
Yeah, I was drinking bourbon, but the chemical engineering is a unique deal, because there's not a lot of jobs in Kentucky for chemical engineers. You might go to Ashland Oil, or there's a few, but the distilling business is actually perfect for that. And I've actually done some work with University of Kentucky since my graduation, and we've been talking about they're actually starting an apprentice program. Not apprentice, but
associates kind of thing?
Not an associate. You have to figure that out.
We'll throw an adjective in there for us.
Yeah, kind of a trade school, vocational kind of
Anyway, I've been over there talking with them about that and working with them to start that, because no place better than Kentucky in all of the U.S. They have something out in California.
There's one in Michigan State too, I think, a distillery program.
I think UC Davis does something, but University of Kentucky should do it.
Right, absolutely.
And so certificate program, that's what it's called.
Gotcha.
And they're working on that.
Well, I think it's interesting because it'll definitely get a lot more people, I guess, involved with it, right? Because,
yep.
I guess, we've talked to different people and they say, how'd you get into bourbon? They're like, well, at some point I just needed a job, right? And it just kind of fell
stuck
into
around here.
Right. But now it's becoming almost, it's a destination job, right? That people are wanting to start getting into the business. They want to understand it. And schooling is definitely a good way to get there. I guess the one thing that we always see that's pretty common among all these distilleries is that it's people stay there a long time, right? There's not a whole lot of turnover. So maybe the job market will be there, maybe it won't when they come out, right? But with the business always steadily growing, there's always going to be some kind of open positions that are going to be happening.
I saw some stats, not too long ago. They estimated about 15,000 jobs in Kentucky are with the distilleries. And, you're talking about sales, marketing, production, bottling, any kind of, there's lots of different jobs. So that all is something that kind of gets lost, and we really should promote that in Kentucky.
Absolutely.
Because all these guys are going to school and trying to get different degrees. There's a big industry there that's alive and well, and it's becoming more global.
Not even at the distilleries, just like the cooperages, the Vendome,
exactly.
You just got this whole system
Trucking,
that feeds
farming,
it, so it's,
metalwork, engineering, electrician.
My dad's a machinist, so he helps, tool and die repair at some local distilleries, so yeah.
So when you add that all up, I think universities should promote that, because, when these guys come out of school, most of them want jobs. Some of them don't, but the ones that do come out, they have a good industry. In my opinion, the best industry in the state.
Absolutely.
So I guess give us some background in your. I guess you could say it was an apprenticeship,
Yep.
But to become the master distiller. So the years, the study, and how you kind of gain those skills to where you are today.
I started, with working under Gary, and I worked for him for 10 years. And, all throughout that 10 years, we did everything from raw ingredients all the way to the maturing of barrels. So, I think from basically that experience, tasting and all the things that you do in a 10-year period, you pick that up, and then you combine that with a little bit of education. It tends to help, and then you understand the engineering stuff behind it, and try to pick up how the plant works. And then once you figure that out, then you can kind of operate.
So I guess how long do you think it really took for you to master it, right? Or do you think it's still always an education process?
It is definitely always an educational process. And I asked Gary that question before he retired. He was here 37 years. And I asked him a couple days before he left, I said, did you ever stop learning? And he said no. Because we talked about that all the time. We were together, we were learning things. You're bouncing ideas off of each other, and things are always changing, equipment malfunctioning or whatever, weather, whatever you're talking about, farms and wood and barrels and on and on and on. So you're always adapting to change and learning on the fly, and you have to pick up all those things along the way. Otherwise, you have to be very versatile.
What kind of? Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. What kind of traits do you think you possess that kind of led them to chose you, or what makes a great master distiller? I
think believe it or not, I think you have to have a little bit of imagination. I don't think nothing is a cookie cutter. You have to have some imagination and wanting to innovate and do some things to improve operations and whatever we're doing at the time. So I think that's an important part of it personally. It's not cut and dry in a laboratory.
That kind of feeds into Buffalo Trace's motto, right?
It does, well, I don't know if that's by coincidence or it's just the way it worked out, but I think it's an important part of it. I think you do have to have a strong background and understand engineering, chemistry, and things like that.
So on that kind of same topic of innovation, right? So maybe a lot of listeners, they understand that Buffalo Trace is known for a lot of different bourbon brands, but there is a brand here that's named after you, right? So I guess go ahead and talk about the one thing that maybe people don't know.
Well, we just started that brand it's been on at our gift shop for about 5 or 6 months now. And we just released it out to the liquor stores and Liquor Barn specifically about 2 months ago. So it's relatively new. It's a vodka that we produced, and it's 10 times distilled. And that all that is a culmination of a lot of experience. We started making vodka in 1997, and we basically started from scratch with no instructions. And all the things that we learned along the way, how can we make the best tasting vodka that we can possibly make, really? And I kind of feel that bottle represents that. We distill it the right amount of times. It's made with it's actually 2 different recipes, made properly, and it's just a really good, clean vodka.
So I guess you could think as a master distiller, you're doing a lot of tasting. So at least that gives you a different flavor palette to kind of throw around, right?
Yeah, you're just tired of tasting bourbon. You're like, I got to get something in here to change it up.
Well, it actually stemmed from marketing. They came into our still house one time, and we have a light whiskey still in the still house that was put in 1969. And we had never used it, never hooked it up, never been operated. And the marketing guy walked through there in 97, and he said, "Do you think you could run this still?" And of course, immediately said yes, because nobody going to back down from a challenge. We had no idea how to run the damn thing and didn't have instructions and no controls hooked up, but we hooked it all up and started running trial and error and just figured it out. And like I said, we just over time figured out the best way to make a good, clean, good tasting vodka over time.
So you kind of separate that out from your core business a little bit?
Yeah, it was totally different. What we would do on the vodka is run that when we get done with the bourbon in the summertime. We were down 2 or 3 months every summer, and there was nothing else to do other than repairs and maintenance, and it was another product for us to produce. So we consolidated everything to the summer. We finally got to the point where a couple of years ago we got to the point where we couldn't do that because we're making so much bourbon. So we actually installed a separate vodka still, and we can run that simultaneous now with the bourbon, and we're making vodka at the same time.
So I guess then that means all production had to ramp up through bottling, through all that sort of stuff, right? So I guess give us some kind of idea of how many bottles and barrels you think you're pumping out here per day.
Well, right now we're running about 820 barrels a day or so of whiskey, and for us that's a little bit different. A couple of years ago we were only running one shift, and we've ramped up production to the point now where we're running the distillery 24 hours a day, 6 months out of the year, and then the other 6 months we're only running back to the one shift production. So we still have some capacity here, but we're quickly mopping it up. We're continuing to expand. We basically ran out of space in warehousing, so we're expanding our warehousing currently. We repurchased some office buildings and converting those back to the original barrel warehouses, and we're storing barrels over there and planning expansion.
Get rid of some desk chairs and some all that kind of stuff. It basically just throwing some bourbon barrels.
I was just over there this morning, and 3.5 months ago we had somebody over there doing bookwork on the desk.
Some old Cisco phones sitting on the table or something like that.
And you go over there right now, and you would never know it. It's full of barrels.
Trying to optimize every space.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting.
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon. the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point-of-sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
So I guess let's kind of go back a little bit about the brands and kind of what's your job here as a master distiller, right? So I guess on average, tastings, right? So when you're doing your tastings and you're looking for certain characteristics or profiles of the brand, how many tastings do you think you would do maybe in a week, a day, whatever it kind of is?
I pretty much taste every day. We do a lot of single barrel selections. And I go up we have a tasting panel that we call it, and you go up to the lab and they'll already sample the barrels and have them in glasses, and we'll taste probably 30, 40 samples every day, sometimes more than that. It just depends on our workload and how many we need to barrel. And so we'll go up there and the tasting panel. So if I'm away, if I'm in San Francisco or some other city, it doesn't shut down, obviously. We've got other people trained to taste, and we have to have a commitment. And so if we have a minimum of 5 people that taste, all 5 people have to agree that those barrels taste like they should, according to standard. If we have one person out of the 5 that doesn't agree, it's kicked out. So it doesn't matter if I agree or not. It's the whole group has to agree.
Right. Yeah. So
it's the best way to operate.
Yeah. So I guess for some of the listeners out there, the one things that you think. When you think of Buffalo Trace, we talked about all those brands earlier, there's actually 3 different mash bills, right? There's mash bill 1, mash bill 2, and WL Weller. But I guess so you're looking for those certain characteristics that fit an Eagle Rare brand to be able to say, like, this barrel is definitely going to fit this sort of flavor profile. Is that sort of the kind of way that it goes?
That is exactly the way it goes. So we'll have a standard depending on, we have about 20 bourbons, and each one of those bourbons have a standard. So Eagle Rare, as an example, is a 10-year-old rye bourbon, and we actually have 3 rye bourbons, and it's the lowest of the rye bourbons. So it's a 10-year-old low rye bourbon that we have a standard for, and we'll taste and compare those barrels to that.
Oh, good. No, that definitely makes sense. So you have a team that's involved within this, so it's definitely a group consensus. So if something gets kicked out, let's just say that. So this barrel gets kicked out. What happens to it? Does it go back into aging? It's not
ready yet, or
some secret project that you're gonna have to figure out for later on?
So we get a lot of volunteers to take those barrels.
Yeah,
I don't get on that list.
Yeah. So, but we call that the disposition of the barrels. So if most of the time that barrel either gets dumped into a bigger tank of a 10-year-old bourbon, or it could go younger, like an 8-year-old bourbon. Depends on how it tastes. But we do just declare the disposition of that barrel based on our taste. So very few times, if we taste, 100 samples that are bad, maybe 2 of those might get dumped into a younger bourbon or something like that. And the rest of them are either go back to aging, maybe a little longer, or they just get used for something else. So it just depends. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 gets destroyed. I mean, probably more than that. Now let's put it this way. In 20 years, I've probably tasted 10 that we've destroyed.
Right.
So it's not very many.
What for the taste, I guess, and characteristics, what's more important, that mash bill or the aging process to you?
If you ask me the question, but more important than mash bill or aging, I would say aging. Now, they're all important, but aging is pretty much the critical part of the process as far as different labels go, because you can take a recipe, a perfect example is Eagle Rare and Buffalo Trace, same recipe and create two different style bourbons by aging it differently. And so that's a pretty important. I generally, and I've been asked that before, but I generally say aging is about 50% of responsible for about 50% of the quality of that product. So it's a big deal. The rest of it, you can bust it out. And I kind of say recipe is about 12%. Because I've been asked that before, but so it just depends. But they're all important.
Yeah.
They're critically important, really.
So, I mean, I guess that always goes back to the innovation piece, right? So you're looking for new things. You're looking to try out new things. So I guess gives people the understanding of the single oak project, even though it's just running its final run right now. But talk about a little bit of the history of it and, what you're really experimenting with.
Well, first of all, we dedicated that project to Ronnie Edens. And Ronnie Edens, his initials are on every bottle. And Ronnie Edens was our warehouse manager. He started here in 1961, and he just passed away about 5 years ago. And he dedicated his professional life, I guess, to us. And he was involved with that project from the beginning. And what we did is we went out into the forest and hand-selected trees. We did GPS locations of those trees. We cut each tree down. We made a barrel out of each, 2 barrels actually, one from the top half, one from the bottom half of each tree. And then we aged different recipes in those barrels. And we had 7 total variables. And from those variables, we basically, I think it was 192 barrels that we released to the public over a course of 4-year period. It was 8-year-old bourbon. And then we released that out for 4 years. And we're getting feedback on the website from the general public. And the winner, the highest rating bourbon of all those bourbon barrels, we're going to create the first single oak bourbon by the general public. And it's basically, so if you can imagine, it took us about a year to plan it, 8 years to age the bourbon, 4 years to release it. And then once we figure out which one to make, it's going to take us 8 more years to make it. So it's about a 18 to 20 year project. And
anything in the bourbon industry is a patience game.
You have to have long-term vision, right, to say the least. If y'all ever thought about, I know it wouldn't be considered a bourbon, but playing around with different other woods for barrels.
We have, and I think we've publicly said it, but we've experimented with barrels from all over the world, and we've got about 3,200 barrels in the warehouse of different things, not just wood, but different recipes, different distillations, and all kinds of things.
Yeah, if you Google around, there's definitely people talk about the Mongolian wood, right? About it's the flavor characteristics are, I guess, completely different from what you would expect, right?
Yep. And what we've seen is there are differences depending on where the wood is grown. It's still white oak, but it picks up, I guess, from the environment, different flavor profiles. And so, at some point when we deem it's ready, the whiskey will release it and show people what we think. Yeah,
and without even trying to pry anymore, but I mean, there's another thing you guys have here called Warehouse X, right? The experimentation warehouse that you do all kinds of crazy things with it. And, I'm not going to try to pry anything, but I guess this kind of give us an example of what are some of the things that you might be thinking about dealing with, whether it's more sunlight, open air concepts, temperature gauges, whatever it is.
So everything you just said, we're doing, and anything that involves the environment, we're going to do it. And we've laid out basically 20 years of experiments. So it's similar to the single oak project. We've got 20-year experiment that we're 6 months into, and we're experimenting with all the variables and the combination of variables of airflow, sunlight, temperature, and humidity. So like we do all the exploring with recipes and wood and distillation and things like that, we're also exploring the environment. So the idea, when you bring those two things together, you come up with maybe the best tasting bourbon you can possibly make.
Yeah.
So I guess that also feeds in, because you can talk to some other master distilleries, you can talk to people in the industries, and they might say, stick with what you know, right?
Which I agree with that.
Yeah, stick with what you know. And I guess you're doing a lot of these experiments. What's the big, I guess, cataclysmic reason behind it? Why isn't you just say, well, we're really good at just doing this, and it's selling really well, let's just keep going for that? Is it looking for finding the taste of other people that want to start looking at it? Is it trying to keep the Buffalo Trace fan base happy by introducing new and exciting things? What do you kind of see it as?
I think most people realize that if you rest on if you don't continue to progress, you will be left behind, because somebody else will do it.
Innovate or die. That's another
innovate
good
or
quote,
die,
right?
and most people understand that. Now, some people in the bourbon industry don't understand that, but I think most people in the world do, and we definitely understand that. We think that there's always some way to improve, or if anything else, allow us to continue to be consistent in our products. And in order to be consistent, you have to completely understand the process. There's lots of theories out there and lots of things out there that we think we know, but we don't know for sure unless we prove it. And and with Warehouse X is a perfect example. There's lots of theories out there on barrels and how they're aging, and we've already disproved a couple of them in 6 months. So I think their full understanding, it takes some science and some understanding of the whole process. So I think it's just like NASCAR to everyday cars. You prove things out on the track, and then you release the new tires 10 years later.
It's like,
and it happens all the time.
Failing forward. You got to fail, to kind of figure out what works.
Why do we use so much corn in bourbon? I mean, it's regulated. We have to use 51%. But, what's the key ingredient? What are we looking for there? And we're trying to understand it all.
So do you think Warehouse X is what makes your job fun and exciting still, especially in an industry that has such rich tradition and hasn't completely changed a whole lot?
No, I think it is fun. We're allowed to do that. I mean, we have owners that support us being able to do that. We're privately held. We don't have to answer to shareholders. And I understand that and appreciate that, because, if you had shareholders, you probably couldn't do half the stuff we do, because it's not profit. It's not a profit center. It's about learning about the future and so on. So I think that's an important part of it. It does make it fun, a little bit exciting. I think everything we do in general. You asked me that earlier about getting tired of it. I haven't yet to get tired of it. I mean, there's nothing to get tired of.
Yeah, I mean, I love my wife. I love my wife's meatloaf, but if I had to eat it, 20 days in a row, I might get tired of it.
10 times a day for 20 days in a row.
Right.
So another thing, the innovation and thinking about the future, how is Buffalo Trace thinking about the future in regards to, because pretty much right now, a lot of the products are already pretty much pre-allocated, right? And how do you sit there and you think, well, I need to forecast for the next, think about 23 years, right?
So a lot of people, especially if they've really never talked about bourbon before, don't realize that all of our production for Pappy Van Winkle for 2038 is complete. And we're looking at 2039, how much to make. So when our production plan is put together, we have to look at 2039, 2040, 2041.
You don't have 10-year plans; you have 100-year plans.
We do actually have 100-year plans, because we're concerned with forests and how trees grow and all that kind of thing. So
because that definitely affects everyone, right? Because everybody's got to get barrels. Everybody's allocated on barrels, and it's definitely even harder, because nobody thinks about the liquid. You got to think about the process that goes into the getting all that too.
Yeah, I have a meeting on Thursday with the National Forest guys, because one of the things we're not doing is harvesting wood from the National Forest. We're just letting 150 million board feet of wood die a year in the Daniel Boone National Forest, and it's not being used. So, why are we letting this wood die when we could properly manage, as long as we properly manage the forest, can be done. So I think you have to balance make sure environmentally it's right, but at the same time, not let it die at the same time.
Right, go to waste.
For us, it's a pretty important thing.
Absolutely.
So it's really good that you're able to come on here and just give a kind of a look into your day, because it's just not about the bourbon anymore, right? I mean, it's about everything else that affects it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
at the end of the day,
it's the facilities, it's the people, it's everything, right?
It is everything that goes into at the end of the day having a bottle of bourbon, but it's a long term. We talked about that earlier. It touches a lot of different people,
right?
A lot of different facets.
What's the favorite part of your job that you're like, this makes me keep coming back and loving it?
I think my favorite part is when we do public tastings and people see the bourbon and taste the bourbon. 100% of the time, they're happy. I've never been to one that people aren't out enjoying themselves. So I think we're in an industry where it just generally makes people happy, and it's kind of an entertainment business, And so I think that part is, I know I'll never get tired of that for sure.
Then you end up with wrist cramps because you're writing autographs all day then too, right?
Yeah, that's a little.
Does the celebrity part of it kind of get old, or do you?
No, I mean, it's just, for me, I just try to, I'll sign them if you want me to sign them, but that's, it's not about that. So
I hate when people sign them because I'm like, for some reason, I feel like I shouldn't drink it, but
I can't open this bottle anymore, right? Yeah.
Well, my theory on that is to have two of them.
Right. Well, with your all stuff, it's impossible to get one. So
True. But you just have to get on the right list.
I know. But we'll talk later about your lawn.
But when demand's good, that means business is good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, fantastic. Well, Harlen, we definitely appreciate you being on the show today. This is a great, and hopefully, once a few more releases come out, we can come back and interview again and talk about those. I think it'd be a really interesting topic. Yep. So if you enjoy what you're listening to, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bourbon Pursuit.
Yep. Just feedback, suggestion, comments. Thanks, Harlen, again. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it, and hope you enjoy it, and have a good day.